All right, here we go. So this is a emergency hash rate pod. I feel like Alex Jones. Hello, Patriots. All right, so we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the quantum threat to Bitcoin. So what happened was Google released the Willow quantum computing chip. It has 105 qubits, which is a big step up from the previous record of 53. But the big advance, however, is error correction. For 3 decades, as you added more qubits to a quantum computer, the entire chip got worse. Errors multiplied. But Willow is the opposite. As you add more qubits, the error correction gets exponentially better. So this lays the groundwork for scaling up the number of qubits and provides a path forward for quantum computing in general. But immediately, this freaked a lot of people out who started speculating over whether the core encryption of Bitcoin was now threatened by quantum computers much more quickly than anyone had expected. Yeah. And Chamath Palihapitiya on the All-In Pod speculated that Bitcoin now just has 2 to 5 years before Bitcoin wallets are compromised by a quantum computer. Is he right? Well, to help us answer this question, we have co-author of The Big Bitcoin Book and Bitcoin First guru, Ben Sigman. Hello, Ben. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Mark? Thanks for having me. Thanks for plugging the book. We still have some books available at bigbitcoinbook.com, of course.
Very nice.
And so, so basically, I just want to say the answer to your question is Chamath right? I think he might be.
Okay.
I think he might be right. And it's the kind of thing when you first see it, you're like, this is just more FUD. We're at the top of we're at this bull market. We're not like Bitcoin's hitting all-time highs every day. And then this thing comes around. It's like just stuff meant to try to slow us down.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Really, it's exactly what you said. It's completely tied to this Willow thing. So like what happened is on December 9th, I got this text from my friend in Puerto Rico, a guy named Heath. Very smart guy, very smart tech guy. Has built just a ton of apps, very into modern developments in technology. He writes me, he's like, is this thing bad for Bitcoin? And I was like, what thing? I don't even know what you're talking about. He's like, this new Google chip. I went and looked it up, and I was like, okay, short answer is no.
Yep.
This is not an immediate threat to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I remember you tweeting that because I was sort of researching it while you were, and I saw your tweet on that.
Yeah, like the relevancy of that tweet is amazing it's amazing how X works, where it's like, if you hit the relevancy on something, that post got to 2 million views.
Yeah, so big.
So it's like the biggest post I've ever had. And it completely blew up because everyone was wondering and researching this thing.
Yeah.
And so was I. And I love learning new stuff and sharing it as soon as I learn it. That's kind of like something that I've always been into doing. And Fred is that on a whole new level, of course. He's
Fred Krueger, your co-author of the Big Bitcoin Book and fellow Bitcoin First co-conspirator.
Yeah, he's a co-conspirator. We work in this Bitcoin Pirate Flag office together. He's not here today, but he took off. But anyways, so what I basically found out was a couple things that were very interesting. So over the past sort of week, I've been completely digging into this quantum question.
Yep.
And really understanding whether this is FUD, how do we fight the FUD? How do we prep for this eventual quantum attack? What is the attack? Yeah. Just like in any type of security, you have to first know what you're defending from. Right? So the ultimate first question is, what are we actually defending from? And really understanding that attack. And do you understand it much? Or
I mean, I think I understand. I probably understand about half of what you do because, like you, I've been digging into this quite a bit. Yeah. And what my understanding is that we're at 105 qubits. Basically, in order to crack Bitcoin's encryption, like to crack a wallet, you need 13 million qubits, I believe, is the number. And so, if that number is correct, and you can tell me whether it is or not, but if it is, Moore's law would suggest that we're like 10 to 20 years away from that. But you seem to think it might be a lot closer, and so does Chamath. So why is that? What have I got wrong, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting because basically these estimations are always based on what we know now. And one thing that I've uncovered in the past week is basically we don't know a lot.
Okay.
So there's a lot of research papers out there that have not been peer reviewed that contain different types of ideas around how to use different forms of math and develop new ways of making these quantum gates combine to improve error correction, other aspects that can make it so that ECC, elliptic curve cryptography, which is the cryptography algorithm that Bitcoin uses for generating addresses and signing transactions, right?
Yep.
ECDSA 256 to be specific. So it's a 256-bit encryption. That will eventually be broken by quantum. That's not a question. There's no question about that.
We've always known it, though. I mean, even Satoshi knew that. So
yeah,
it's coming. Yeah.
And all of people. One of the things I've been finding is that in my sort of tweets about this, because I've been tweeting about this a lot over the past week. Because once this tweet topic took off, I was like, man, I'm going to just keep digging into this. This is great. It's rewarding, and I'm learning so much about it. So it turns out that people are really saying stuff like, look, the financial system will get attacked first, Ben.
Right. Banks.
SSL is going to get attacked first. Traditional finance is going to get attacked before Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. It's like, I mean, don't you think so?
I mean, true, but you know what? That's unfortunately, I kind of looked into this too, and I was reading about it, and it's actually incredibly naive to think that.
Okay, well, why is that?
Yeah, because if you just do a little bit of digging, you can see that like most banking and traditional financial infrastructure actually uses a higher bit encryption. So those numbers that come after whatever the algorithm is called that are being used by these different programs, sort of determines how difficult it is. It's usually 2 to the power of something, right?
Yep.
So 256 is 2 to the power of 8. Okay. And most of these traditional finance things use 2 to the power of, well, they go like RSA 2048 is traditionally used by banks, for example. Well, that's just like exponentially way harder than 256.
Yep.
It's not 3 times harder. It's like exponents harder.
Right.
So there's way harder encryption out there. Actually, Bitcoin's encryption is kind of soft compared to a lot of what's used by SSL, SSH, and traditional finance. And guess what? A bunch of these banks and traditional finance companies have been already implementing post-quantum for 10 years. So they're already been thinking about quantum, getting way ahead of it. Because the truth is, when you have something really centralized, where you have leadership, where you have a decision-making process that's very clear, you can make these moves easily. Like, when China was like, we're going to make all taxis work on electricity in 2 years. When they flip a switch and it happens. Like, you could never do that in New York.
Yeah.
But in Shanghai or Beijing, they can make that happen because they have so much power as that central authority, the authoritarianism. That's the same thing with the banks. So making these changes there is way faster. Making these changes in Bitcoin is way slower.
Let me ask you a question though. Wait, so when you talk about quantum resistance, there's sort of there's what you just described, which is it's a much larger key, and so therefore you need a much more powerful quantum computer. But if this quantum thing gets rolling, that's probably not far off either, right? So that doesn't really solve the problem. That just sort of kicks the can down the road, right? Yeah. Now there's quantum resistant algorithms.
Yes.
So how are they quantum resistant? Like, why are they? Do you understand that?
Yeah, I can kind of go into that a little bit. So I think let's work our way up to that question. Okay. I really like that question, but let's kind of go step by step. I think the first thing is we're kind of talking about what are the attack vector, right? What is actually the attack vector on Bitcoin? I'd like to address that quickly. So the attack vector on Bitcoin is specific to this ECDSA, elliptic curve cryptography. So it turns out that Bitcoin uses public and private key pairs, and there's an attack that quantum is actively working on. These researchers are working around the clock, basically trying to break this algorithm, ECC, elliptic curve cryptography. Because you know what it is for them? It's a career-defining lifetime achievement. It's like a final boss in the video game. If they're able to crack even a low-level ECDSA, 8-bit, that becomes like, I was the first to do that. They'll write books.
You're the guy.
They'll have an entire career. Yeah. So they're trying to crack these algorithms. And ECDSA 256 is pretty low on the ladder compared to a lot of the cryptography out there in the world.
Yep.
So Bitcoin is actually kind of lower down on this rung. And the actual attack is this thing called Shor's algorithm. So there's a guy, Shor, famous cryptographer named Shor, who's done a lot of amazing things in cryptography. He outlined this attack vector, an algorithm where you can compute and guess at a private key, just knowing the public key. So it has to take the input of the public key, and eventually it finds a private key that matches that. And the quantum computers are the only things that are going to be available to do this kind of math. Currently, to calculate Shor's algorithm for ECDSA 256 on a traditional, regular computer, I mean, even a supercomputer, the world's most powerful, regular logic gate computer, would take, I think, 10 trillion years or more.
Hash Rate is sponsored by Ledger. With the announcement of Ledger Flex and Ledger Stacks, Ledger gives you the best security on the planet for your crypto and identity. Ledger Flex and Stacks drive an e-ink screen with the same secure chip that's in your credit card and passport. Except, instead of protecting the secrets of banks and governments, Ledger protects your secrets and your private keys. Ledger supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and more than 200 other tokens. The secure touchscreen, plus the Ledger Live app, means that whether you're buying your very first Bitcoin or doing your 2000th swap, you can do it securely and easily with your Ledger. And as always, use my link, shop.ledger.com/hashrate in the show notes to get the very best price whenever you buy a Ledger Flex or Stacks. Yes. So let me can I just restate something here? Because I think this is an important point. So it's not just cracking the encryption, generally. It's basically if you have the public key, a Bitcoin public key, that greatly reduces, like by orders, insanely, exponentially, reduces the search space that the quantum computer has to calculate in. And so that is what makes it possible, right? Like, so if you don't have the public key, you cannot perform this attack. Is that correct?
It's correct. I think of it like this. Like if you have a lock on your door and you call a locksmith to come, the locksmith can eventually make a key that will work in that lock.
Yeah.
Eventually they will be able to figure it out just by kind of putting it in there, turning it a little bit, seeing if it turns. The more complicated your lock is, the longer it takes them. Currently, to do that with a Bitcoin address, it takes 10 trillion years.
Okay.
But with quantum computing, it eventually will get to a point where it can do this in first years, then months, then days, then hours. Yep. The question is, how many qubits are required? How big do these quantum computers have to be, and how many gates do they have to have, and how many logical gates? And there's a difference between physical versus logical, and Willow had 105 like physical gates, but that made one logical gate, and all of these, there's all this like minutia details to understand. But the original estimate was 13 million, but now it's believed to be much lower than that because there's all these advancements in how the math can be done. Mm-hmm. And that increases the probabilities of being able to find these keys. So there's hardware improvements that we're seeing like with Willow.
Yep.
There's technological improvements, there's mathematical improvements. And all of these advancements are kind of exponentially making this faster. So this stuff can change really quickly. Like, do you remember 2 years ago when it was like you could generate really crappy images with AI?
Yeah.
But like you couldn't form a sentence? And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT came out a year ago or so. When did it come out? It was like a year ago?
No, it was like 2 years ago now.
It was 2 years now.
Yeah.
But like, it was like within a year, it was like you went from crappy images to almost like it felt like you were talking to AGI. Like,
I just
Turing test.
I just generated a movie trailer video for my novel, and it looks good. It looks like a real movie, right? It's like 2 minutes worth of video. Yeah.
I would love to see it. Anyways, it's insane. So obviously these things can happen really quickly. We don't know the exact time frame. When I first saw Chamath's tweet, I was like, dude, come on. I just been reading about this thing. It seems like that's not true. Then I read nine of these quantum papers that people are sending me. So people are just like sending me tons of information. I got, all these different crypto guys and and basically cryptographers and developers working on Bitcoin. Even this guy Hunter Beast, who wrote the bit for Bitcoin, which we can get into.
Yes.
Sending me all of this information. And so I've been talking to a bunch of researchers, a bunch of developers, a bunch of mathematicians, and I've gained so much insight into this. I actually was like, wow, Chamath is kind of right. It could be as little as 2 years. It could be as much as 10.
Yep.
We don't really know, but you don't want to be on the wrong side of that bet.
You don't.
Not
So,
at all.
do you think 2 years is kind of the minimum based on what you know?
I think so. I think
That seems like a reasonable minimum. Okay, so we've got 2 years till apocalypse, maybe.
Well, it's actually not called apocalypse; it's called Q Day.
Yep. Okay. Q Day.
Q Day is the term. So, like, there's a little glossary I kind of posted on my Twitter about like different terms you should know.
Yep.
So Q Day is the term for when we have what's called quantum emergency.
Yep.
It's an emergence, but it's also an emergency. So there will be a point in time where someone announces, hey, I've actually broken ECC with 8 bits. I've broken it with 16. I've broken it with 32 bits, 64, and we'll go up.
So it'll be a progression. It won't just be like an apocalypse. It'll be like an incremental apocalypse.
Yeah, but it could be like, oh, I broke 8-bit yesterday and today I broke 32. It may not be that long to go from one order of these to another, because quantum can improve exponentially. Unlike, it doesn't exactly follow Moore's law, I don't think.
Okay. So basically, you get one to tum tum tum,
exactly,
and everyone gets belly aching about their Bitcoin at the same time.
I mean, it's potentially the thing that could really challenge the bull market if it does happen in the next 2 years. Like it's a serious thing. So, the next thing I was really surprised to learn about from this idea is like how many addresses are vulnerable.
Yep.
And so it turns out that every address before 2012 is vulnerable to this attack because they're all pay to public key, P2PK.
Mm-hmm. And
so when you pay to a public key, it reveals your address is the public key. So you're giving the public key to the quantum computer right there.
But all the public keys, you can see all the public keys though on a Bitcoin block explorer, right?
You can't, not for the other addresses. So in 2012, there was an innovation in Bitcoin addresses where they were like, maybe we shouldn't show the public key. Why don't we pay to a hash of the public key? And then the public key is only revealed when you spend from that address.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So if you only use the address one time, it's not vulnerable to any quantum attack. So actually, there's already some quantum resistance in Bitcoin already.
Well, now, would this include, that's very interesting. I did not know that. Mm-hmm. So would this include Satoshi's wallet with the million Bitcoin in it? 100%. Is that vulnerable or not? That is vulnerable.
Anything before 2012.
Anything before 2012. Okay, that's 100%. What I thought. I just want to double check. Okay.
So that kind of takes us to the next thing is that I was talking to another friend of mine the other day on the phone, and she was like, have you seen this thing where they're trying to lock Satoshi's coins? Yeah, the people are saying they're going to lock Satoshi's coins at some point in time. And I was like, that sounds completely messed up. Bitcoin will never stand for that.
Well,
guess what? There's no other way. Yeah. There's no other way to deal with this. There will be a point in time where any of these old addresses will become defunct. So there will be sort of a period where people will need to move their Bitcoin to these new quantum resistant addresses. So I'd love to get into that a little bit and talk about that, but I want to just talk about what other addresses are vulnerable. So
can I actually just say something? I have a question. Yeah. So it sounds to me like what you just said is that it's not a matter of quantum computers cracking Bitcoin en masse. Quantum computers will crack some addresses before others, and others maybe are not crackable. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
It is correct. The attack that we know now, there could be other attacks in the future, but the attack that we know now, Shor's algorithm, requires taking input of the public key.
Yes.
So if your public key has been revealed, meaning if you have an address before 2012, which includes Satoshi's addresses, or any address before 2012 that has Bitcoin in it, those are all public keys exposed on chain.
Yeah, so that's done.
Done. If you've sent from an address if you've sent from any address to have a balance in there, done. If you use Taproot, done.
Done as in you're vulnerable?
The newest address is Taproot, the latest innovation,
Yep.
is also vulnerable.
Okay.
Apparently it has some kind of way of deriving the public key very easily from the address that's widely known. So it uses these certain scripts that on-chain kind of have a public key version in them. So those are done too. Yeah. So all those are done.
So it's kind of bad. It's kind of a bad situation, sounds like.
Yeah, and to make it worse, someone did a calculation. They say, okay, let's say the block size remains at exactly where it is. And everyone who has Bitcoin in vulnerable addresses needs to move it to these new quantum resistant addresses.
Yep.
It would take 6 months with no other traffic on Bitcoin, with full blocks to do every transaction.
Oh, I see. So basically all Bitcoin wallets would get assigned to them a new wallet, which had a quantum resistant wallets. And then everybody would have to move their coins from their old, vulnerable wallet to this new quantum proof wallet, and basically assume there's no other transactions at all on the Bitcoin network, which can never happen. But let's just assume it does. It would take 6 months for everyone to move everyone over because of the throughput restrictions, the number of transactions that are possible per 10-minute block. Correct?
100%, because of the block size limits.
Yes.
So add this into the equation. That's why this has to start now. And that's why I became very interested in talking with Hunter Beast. And we had him on Bitcoin First.
Yep.
I think it was yesterday for like 2 hours talking about this issue and really understanding what his proposal was, how it works, how it implements these sort of post-quantum cryptography. And
who is he and why is he an expert?
Yeah, who is he and why is he an expert? Well, so he is actually a cryptographer and developer.
Yeah.
He chose the name Crypto Quick, like way before crypto was a thing. So I think he got into Bitcoin sometime in the 2011, 2012 area. He has a website where he talks about some of this. I'm not an expert on his total history, but basically he's working on implementing this BIP in particular. So he's written a specification. He's written a very good specification. It's actually, I read through it, and I have a summary on my Twitter that kind of...
For what? Specification for what?
Yes, okay. So this is a good point. So the way that Bitcoin changes is through this thing called a Bitcoin Improvement Proposal.
Yep.
A BIP. BIP.
Yep.
And his BIP is called Qubit. Qubit. And it actually just got assigned a number today. So it's going from a draft to an actual pending proposal. So it's made its way through the pipeline already.
Like a bill in Congress. Now it's out of committee and okay.
It's going to be in committee for a little while still, but basically his BIP introduces this idea called P2QRH, which really stands for pay to quantum resistant hash. So we've had pay to public key, pay to public script key hash, there's all these different versions, pay to taproot pointers, whatever. Like there's all these different P2 whatevers in Bitcoin that determine different address types.
Yep.
That use different forms of algorithms to generate public and private addresses, essentially, and keys. This is the newest one. It would be P2QRH, right? So why does this matter, P2QRH? Well, it's because this is about creating quantum safe, it's called quantum safe methods, right? So these are different types of cryptography beyond just regular, stronger algorithms where you just add more bits, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
This is a completely different form of math, like lattice-based cryptography, or some other type of future-proof hashing types that are just.
So basically, this is shit that even if you have a quantum computer, doesn't matter. It doesn't help you at all to crack this. Okay.
Yeah. And so his thing is all about having backwards compatibility, multi-sig support, how he's building out all the test functions that wallets and the clients will have to match. So when you have an idea for improving Bitcoin, you don't show up with the whole code right away. You kind of write out a really nice proposal of what it's going to be. You write out a specification document. And he's been working on this specification document, honing it, getting feedback for months now. It's been already, I think, 4 or 5 months he's been working on, has it already out there, and he's been working on improving it. And it's been reviewed by lots of people already, lots of comments. And so it should be getting implemented, starting to get implemented soon. And he says 6 months to 1 year, we could already be on a good path.
Yeah, I was wondering, well, how is the Bitcoin community reacting to this? So they sort of like, man, we don't care, or are they like, we better get on this? Like, have they taken this shit seriously?
Well, I don't really know. It's kind of hard to tell on X who is like an actual Bitcoiner and who's not. You know, like people with a laser-eyed dog saying this is bullshit FUD. I don't know if they matter, but like there's certain voices that do matter, and so you know, like Adam Back. I mean, Adam is a very well-respected guy in the Bitcoin community. You know, he wrote a proposal for Hashcash, which is a kind of a precursor to Bitcoin, of using proof of work. And he's a cryptographer, and he was around in the cypherpunk days before Bitcoin. You know, people have thought maybe he's Satoshi, and he runs a thing called Blockstream, a company called Blockstream that's raised, I think, $200 million to build these Bitcoin sidechains and wallets. And he was on a thread that I think Fred reposted something I did, and he was on there basically saying, like, you guys, this is science fiction. We have a long time to figure this out. Don't worry about it. And I think that he might be right about that too. We just don't really know. But like we talked about, the cost of being wrong is way higher. And so it's not about being alarmist about the situation. I want to really make sure everyone understands that.
Yep.
This is not an alarmist situation. This is about preparation. It's sort of an intelligent way of thinking ahead of what's coming. And so what I encourage Adam to do on this thread is like, Adam, have your team look at this BIP. Really analyze this. Focus on providing feedback for this BIP and implementing this in a testnet. Because
let's be quantum preppers.
Let's be quantum preppers, but also there's no better way to fight FUD than with action.
Yes.
So like, how do we defend Bitcoin from not just quantum attacks, but from the attacks of the gold bugs and TradFi and the government and all these, and the hackers that are going to come at us with actual quantum attacks, and just the fear of quantum attacks could be way bigger.
Fear. It is the fear, right? Because I can just picture Trump like being like, well, I've heard about this quantum stuff. I don't really know if we can actually have a reserve, right? You know, like it's the mind virus that gets going because of the fear of quantum.
That reserve, it was going to be the greatest. It was going to be the greatest.
It was going to be the best.
The quantum thing, I don't know. It seems like it's greater.
Yeah,
we don't want that. So the importance of this BIP now is that, well, everyone needs to read it. Everyone needs to consider it. If you run a Bitcoin node, you need to understand what's happening, what's going down. If you build a Bitcoin wallet, you need to be familiar with it. If you run a Bitcoin sidechain or a Bitcoin application of any kind, you're an exchange, you're an investor, whatever you are, you have to be following this quantum story. You have to be staying up to date to it. You know, I'm going to be up to it. Like, follow me on Twitter for sure, because I'm going to be following this all the way through, supporting it all the way through. And Hunter is basically working as a nonprofit. He kind of has an idea of doing like a side chain that could be a quantum proof side chain that could exist earlier, that could help people custody their Bitcoin in quantum resistant addresses for, look, I don't know. He doesn't really have much of a business plan, but he has a 501c3, and I plan on donating to that, supporting it, helping him outline milestones for this, getting all the developers on board so that all of us that have Bitcoin can fund these milestones with him and make sure that this guy's just not volunteering all his time for free to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would think like a dude like Saylor, who's got more to lose than kind of anybody, would be intensely interested in funding and participating, basically hurrying this along, right?
I think he doesn't need. I have no idea what his budgets are like, but he doesn't need hundreds of Bitcoin to do this. There's projects that raise hundreds of Bitcoin overnight to build these crappy sidechain projects, whatever, that are never going to be anything probably. So giving this guy a few Bitcoin, I think would be really worth it for all of us. So I also plan on tweeting about that, working with Hunter to help him with, I'm not planning to take any of this money, but I just want to help him get funding, move things forward, and, make sure that he feels good about the work that he's doing, which is some of them, this is historical stuff for Bitcoin. This will go into the next version of the book.
It is. This is a Selden crisis, right? Like if this were a foundation, absolutely. This threat is a Selden crisis, and hopefully the story will be the community met it with bravery and quickness, and it was averted very quickly before it ever became a thing. But we don't know how this story turns out.
There's going to be a lot of arguments. I mean, basically, like I think Hunter or someone else in our space has mentioned that part of this will be also increasing the block size because
right. Now we're back to that.
These new quantum resistant hashes, QRH, well, they have larger signature sizes. So everything on Bitcoin has a certain size. The transaction size is dependent on how many inputs, how many outputs there are, and also the type of scripts and other data that are being put into there.
Yeah.
Like let's just say currently, it could be like 100 bits of information or data points or data size is required to do a regular transaction. Let's just say today. Well, these new ones could be 10 times as big. We don't know. I actually haven't done a really good measurement of them yet.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand more of this. So as I learn more, I'll share it. But let's just say it's 10 times as big. Well, now you could fit 1/10 of the transactions, right? So
what is the sort of the governance of Bitcoin look like, in these days? Like where is the council of people, and how do they, what's it like trying to get consensus among them, and how many of them are there, and kind of who are they?
Yeah, this is also a really good question I've been wondering about today, because when Hunter posted that he got assigned a BIP number, I went to the BIPs repository on GitHub, and actually I didn't see a BIP number assigned there. So I was like, well, where did he learn about this in a chat? Is he in some kind of IRC channel with developers? Like, is it happening in the comments of his BIP, or like, where is this actually happening? So I plan on also learning a lot more about that, because I'm not even clear about how this process works. What developers, what maintainers are choosing the BIP numbers?
Right.
Is there a committee? How are they assigning a BIP number? How are they choosing this BIP or that BIP? Do these guys all work at Blockstream? Like, I'm going to answer all these questions in the next week or two. So
okay, good. Yeah, because I think I mean, it's unclear to even me, right? And I'm a big Bitcoin fan. So, where's the Vatican of Bitcoin, and how does it vote for a new pope? Right. I don't know the answer to that.
It's a really, really good question. And so we'll find out. I'll ping you as soon as I know. Yeah. That's one of the things I want to look into. But what I know right now is we have this BIP, and it's fascinating. Anyone can go and read it, right? So if you look at BIP 360, if that's really what the number is going to be, you can find it on GitHub. You can read through the entire thing. You can feed it to an LLM, have it analyze it for you, ask it a ton of questions. Go to Twitter, ping me about it if you have questions. I'd love to hear what they are. But basically, it outlines an implementation plan, right? Yep. So what I do know is there's an implementation plan in the actual BIP. And so there's a plan for rolling out this new quantum resistant hashes. And it begins with sort of this idea of activation testing. So he has to write a test suite that says, here's an input, you should get this output. Here's an input, you should get this output for all these different types of cryptography.
Yep.
And that's what him and his team will be working on. And then there's a gradual adoption of the reliance on these things. So wallets will have to incentivize users to transition. And that transition could begin really soon. Really soon. Once this is adopted, it's going to go quickly. These wallets are going to work on it right away, because it'll be a big factor in what wallets people choose to use. It's going to be a constant topic over the next 2 years, this quantum thing.
Well, how well tested are these new quantum algorithms? Like, I think one of the selling points of Bitcoin was that the encryption that it was based on had been, very, very, very well tested over a very long period of time. Whereas these new quantum algorithms,
it was 8 years old at the time.
Yeah. So the new quantum stuff is pretty new. So
yeah, well, actually, in his BIP, let's take a look at it.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sure.
Totally, I'm completely following you. Oh wow. His BIP actually moved.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it. But in his actual BIP, he does outline a bunch of the post-quantum quantum resistant hash algorithms that he's looking at using. Oh, here we go. Assigned number.
And like how well tested they are and stuff like that?
Well, what year they're from.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can find it in here. So readme.mediawiki. But while I'm looking this up, so he has a list of these things in this BIP. Oh, here we go. Yep, I found it. Yeah, so it is named 360 now in here.
Okay.
Take a look at this. So, okay, he's got a table. If you scroll down in here, you can find there's an area called security. So there's Lamport signature. Year introduced, 1977.
Oh, wow. Okay, so pretty good.
Pretty good. Not the hash-based cryptography.
Yeah.
Right? Then there's one called Winter Knits, 1982.
Okay.
Sphinx, RD 3.1, 2015.
Now, why are people? How were people working on quantum resistant algorithms in the 70s?
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Was it just like
I don't think they were thinking of it as quantum proof, but they were just thinking of it as difficult to. So, like the math to solve these, the math to create these sort of algorithms has no attack even written for them yet. Right. So this is something that it's not known how to attack it potentially. Some of these things.
Right.
But there's a list of, let's just see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 of them. I thought there was 12, but there's 11. And they range from 2024 back to 1977. And, a bunch in 2017 or 2016. So there's all these different age ranges. And it's basically going to be up to the wallets, I believe, to choose which ones they want to implement. So there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of education that's going to be needed. Leading up to this. And there's going to be, like I said, a gradual adoption phase, probably over the next year to 2 years. And then there'll be a full migration. So there'll be a point where once these quantum resistant algos, schemas have reached a level of confidence in their implementation and standards have been established, then there'll be a period where users are being highly incentivized to move.
Okay, so what about Satoshi Nakamoto, who is gone from us, it looks like, and he doesn't move his wallet. What happens?
I think that basically quantum resistance will have to be built into the new upgrades to Bitcoin, such that at some point in time, those private keys will no longer move those funds.
Okay, so basically, we brick his wallet. That's how we do it.
There will be, I believe that's the only way. That's the only way I'm aware of now, and that could change, I guess. But
yeah,
it's beyond my imagination and understanding at this point.
Okay. Well, so I mean, bottom line this for me. You're sitting there beneath your little Bitcoin pirate flag, which I like, by the way. You're the author of a major Bitcoin book, the Big Bitcoin book. Yeah. Which people are loving, by the way, and I've got a copy, and I love that. I've read it cover to cover, so little ad free there. You don't seem worried. I mean, you're a little worried, but not really worried.
Well, I will say I'm more worried than I was a week ago when I wrote that post. I was like, Willow, not a concern.
Yep.
Willow's not a concern, but it's a sign. It's sort of like clouds are forming. It might rain. Is it going to rain? I don't know. There's a probability every year that's going to rain. Every year there's a probability of a Q day, right? Maybe it's 1% a year. Maybe it's lower right now. But that could increase exponentially as these new technological innovations occur. And so in quantum, 2 to 5 years is kind of an eternity, it seems like right now, right? I mean, 10 years is really an eternity. So I really don't think it's going to be 10 years. I just don't.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a major issue for Bitcoin. But I've been watching Bitcoin, I've been involved in Bitcoin for 12 years basically now. Like I found Bitcoin in 2012 and immediately started trying to mine on my laptop then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've lived through all of these market cycles and I've felt the pain of them in so many different ways, from the hacks, even back to Mt. Gox getting hacked. It's just been all these terrible things that happen that feel like total capitulation. This will be another challenge.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm ready for it. I'm more ready than I was before. And I think we've entered a new era of Bitcoin legitimacy. And I don't think this can actually challenge it. I think it will only make us stronger. So it's another challenge. It's something that we're going to have to collectively overcome. We're going to work through it together. And I'm excited that I have been able to play even a minor role in it at this point to help people even become more knowledgeable about different aspects of what's happening.
Your expos have been excellent. So I mean, I've been reading. I mean, we're friends, but also even if I didn't know you, I'd be like, wow, this dude is really laying down some good knowledge here and sort of summarizing a lot of things. So that's why I immediately thought of you for this emergency hash rate podcast for Patriots.
Emergency, but I think it's like I get a little bit obsessed about these things, just like I get a little bit obsessed about other types of Bitcoin research I've done that led to the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this idea of like cracking this ECC, elliptic curve cryptography, it's going to happen. It is inevitable.
Yeah. Do we also is there a branch of is there perhaps a bright spot to this where we get quantum cryptography and that then is applied to Bitcoin? So
yeah, but there's another bright spot, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Ethereum's also preparing. Other chains are also preparing for this. They're all vulnerable to basically almost every blockchain project is vulnerable to quantum attacks.
Yes.
But the king of all meme coin networks, Solana, is going to have a very difficult time.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because of their very short block times and because of the way that they do their signatures.
Yep.
There currently isn't a simple quantum replacement like Bitcoin has. So the way that the network is designed isn't easily fixable. So some of these other networks are going to have a really hard time, which is tough if you really love meme coin casinos. But good for Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin's able to adapt to this new situation and overcome the FUD, it's just going to further cement Bitcoin's position as the only, really the only system that matters. So,
what do you think about the EVM chains? Where are they in vulnerability? You said Solana is incredibly vulnerable. Does EVM share that? Do EVM chains share that?
Not only that, but like apparently, I haven't read Vitalik's thoughts on this yet, but it involves some kind of version of like letting funds get stolen from bridges or something like this. Like it's strange. There's something weird going on there. I haven't read it, but I read a critique of it really quickly, and it's actually in Hunter's. It's mentioned in Hunter's BIP as well that he's kind of saying this Ethereum path is not the path for Bitcoin. We should learn from what not to do there.
Interesting. Okay.
But the fact that it has a leader and maybe it'll be able to pull off. Maybe Ethereum will be able to pull off this more quickly, but there's something about it that's going to really damage these side chains and these zero knowledge proof situations. Or I don't know. I'm not familiar enough about it, but yeah, in one sense, this is going to affect everyone in one way or another. Whatever you do, if you're online in any sense, if you use any online platform, this new quantum stuff that's coming down is going to affect your platform, no matter what it is. So that's coming, and it is beneficial that we're going to get this new stuff, but it's going to be adding new layers of complexity, potentially some confusion, and there's probably going to be some forks of Bitcoin because what the thing with Bitcoin is that if the block size does need to increase, which it seems like it does, it's going to cause this whole
religious war.
Maybe not as bad as last time, but like my viewpoint is kind of it doesn't matter if the block size increases or not. We shouldn't be too attached to that as an idea.
Totally agree.
It doesn't matter. If the block size increases, the miners could make more money. So this is one of the things I think people don't understand is like, if the block size increases, miners will make less money. That's not true. Actually, users will pay less fees on average, is what I think. But then the blocks will have more room for transactions. So they'll have more room for fees. So the max fees paid will be actually way higher.
Yes. And even higher if they start, if you start having BRC20s and, ordinals and all that stuff competing as well.
Of course. And if you have these larger signature sizes, more data, it just becomes more costly eventually. So we could have high fees and bigger blocks and still have blocks completely full with this migration that's going to need to happen. It's like a mass migration. You know, in Africa, those big herds have to fit through these little areas. Like that's what it's going to be like. So the bigger that area is, the better. So I'm completely an advocate for block sizes increasing. 16 megabytes was floated in one of the spaces I was in. I can't remember if it was this guy Ian or Hunter himself who said it, but I'm all for it. I don't think it matters. Satoshi did not have a block size limit initially.
Yeah.
There was no block size limit, and it was added in for an unknown reason later. We don't even know why. Satoshi added it in, was not even clear. This is actually one of the things in the book that I wanted to outline for people. But look, like I think it was the wrong decision during the block size wars to choose smaller blocks, and that this SegWit compromise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think we knew it was the wrong. Now we know it was the wrong decision. I agree with you. It was the wrong decision, but
I wrote Mike Hearn about it. You know, who's an old Bitcoin developer who's left Bitcoin now. He was chased out during the block size wars because he was in the camp of the big blockers. He wanted to increase the block size. One of the main developers of Bitcoin, who it seems to me from the history of his emails when I read them with Satoshi, they're all public, that Satoshi really respected him a lot. He had a different tone with Mike Hearn because Mike Hearn worked at Google before leaving Google to work on Bitcoin full-time for free.
Wow.
So he's a real developer. I mean, the other guys are real developers too, but he was working on a real corporate job and left the corporate world to go work on Bitcoin, an open source project, unpaid. Anyway, Hearn, I wrote him about this issue of SegWit. I said, like, years after SegWit, do you have anything to say? He's like, well, there's really not much to say. Bitcoin has not succeeded at becoming a peer-to-peer currency. So SegWit, in my mind, was kind of a failure. Right?
Fair enough.
He thinks that bigger blocks would have been a better solution, of course. And so now we're going to come to another thing about these block sizes, and why it matters is the initial running a node becomes more expensive. Initial synchronization of the node becomes more expensive. We have to download all the blocks. So all this stuff becomes harder as the block size is bigger, but not that much harder, So it's worth it. I think we should do it. I think people should weigh in though. What do you think? Do you think block size should increase now?
I mean, I thought so back then, but so I think, look, we should always be looking to the future and make Bitcoin as future proof as possible in all dimensions. So I don't think there's anything that's wholly red. We should be improving it. So, carefully, but we should be improving it. And so I think bigger block sizes are one of those improvements that we should have had a long time ago. And now, I mean, thankfully, in a way, it's good that we're having this, quantum Selden crisis to sort of force everybody's hand. So I think it could be healthy, in the end. So
yeah, I think so too, Mark. And so basically, let's go back to your question of what's good about this. What's sort of the silver lining or the orange lining here? So the orange lining is, number one, we're going to find out exactly how much Bitcoin is being held in active wallets. Because the Bitcoin will need to move.
Yes.
We're going to find out exactly how much Bitcoin is active, and the threat of Satoshi coming back and moving his coins will either die or live on. My guess is it will die.
Yeah. Because if he doesn't move his coins for this, it's over. Right. So that if he doesn't move it, then we brick his wallet and that threat goes away forever.
If anyone has access to the Satoshi keys at all, not even just Satoshi, but if there's a Tulip Trust, if there's any of these crazy ideas that have happened over the years about where those keys are,
yeah.
if they move the Bitcoin, whoever it is, then we'll know that they have access to those keys. If they don't, then we know they don't.
Yep.
And so I think that'll be very good for Bitcoin.
Agreed.
So that'll be very good. Another thing that'll be very good is we'll get larger blocks. I think that would actually be a good beneficial outcome for Bitcoin.
Yeah, agreed.
I do. And I also think that then we'll have the Satoshi value. We'll know exactly how much Bitcoin supply there is that's active. So we'll have a real number. We'll know exactly how many lost coins there are. It's estimated to be about 1 million now, but we'll know exactly how many.
It's got to be bigger than that. I mean, I'm just guessing, but I got to say, my guess is it's like 3 million to 5 million, something like that.
I'm in that camp. I think 3 to 5. I think
Yep.
3 to 5. And I also think another thing that's interesting is we'll have some forks of Bitcoin.
Yep.
Now, why is that good? You might wonder why that's good. Well, it's very interesting, but a guy we both know told me a few years ago, he's very funny, kind of an old school investor guy,
Yep.
William Quigley.
Oh, yes.
I was at dinner with William, and it was during the block size wars. And he was like, right after it, I think, and he was like, it's crazy, but you'd think in a traditional company, if there was a battle between all the shareholders and the company was splitting into two companies, it would be like disastrous for the price. But people think differently in Bitcoin. They're like, oh, you mean there's going to be a split in Bitcoin and there's going to be forks and I'm going to have multiple Bitcoin? That's
Yeah, it's great. It's like an amoeba splitting. Yeah.
I should buy more Bitcoin to get more of the forks when they split because they will all have a little value. He's like, you have to think absolute monkey caveman brain about this stuff. It doesn't always make sense,
Well, I mean, the Ethereum split is like when I experienced that for the first time, and I had some early Ethereum, and then the Ethereum Classic came along versus regular Ethereum,
exactly.
Right? And that was great. Everyone made out.
Price, just like the Bitcoin price went up when we had Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Platinum, Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV. All these forks of Bitcoin, they all had some little value. So it
splits in two. You think it's going to be half and half, but a split in two actually creates one and plus one, right? So you get two, right? That's what actually happens, right? It's like an amoeba split.
Like this happens. So there will be forks. Bitcoin will have forks. Some of them will be worth something.
Yeah.
There might be a fork where we have Bitcoin Classic, where like Satoshi's coins can still be moved. It's like a quantum attack thing, It's just a honeypot for quantum.
Bitcoin Classic. That's going to be hilarious. But you're right. We will definitely get things like that.
We'll definitely get all this stuff. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be FUD. And it's going to be a wild few years, I think. And, hopefully Hunter's proposal is the right one and doesn't lead us down the wrong path too. So I think there's a couple call to actions from this, right?
Yeah.
The first call to action, I would say, for anyone who has Bitcoin, think about moving your Bitcoin now to a SegWit address. If you have Bitcoin in a Taproot address, or if you have Bitcoin in a public key, or if you have a Bitcoin address that you've spent from, move it to a new SegWit address that you don't spend from without moving it all in a change address to a new one. These addresses are compostable. You don't need to keep it all in one address.
Yeah.
You can move it to a new one every time you spend some Bitcoin. A lot of wallets do this by default. So Satoshi even said this was an important way to do it back 12 years ago. So everyone should be thinking about doing that now. That's what I'd say is the first thing to do, right? The second thing is, make sure you're following people that are talking about this issue. Follow Hunter, who's writing the BIP. Follow me. Follow anyone who's talking about this quantum thing and really reporting on it on a daily basis. Like, that's great. So you can be on X, kind of tracking this stuff and knowing when it's going to happen. And pay attention, of course, subscribe to this YouTube so we'll do more updates.
We will for sure.
So those are good action items. And if you're technical, go read the BIP, go read the specification, provide comments. Talk to your wallet developers, talk to your custodians. Make sure everyone's aware this is coming up. Ask them what their opinions are. Don't just take my word for it. Go do your own research, right? Yeah. And I think the final thing is donate to Hunter. Let's support Hunter on his mission, okay? This guy, he's doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, it sounds that way. Yeah. So, all right, Ben, I think we've sort of covered it.
Cool.
So, dude, thank you so much for coming on at short notice and telling us everything you know. So
I had a great time.
Ben Sigman, my name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.
See you later.